I call Phil Twyford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This bill fixes an injustice in our laws in relation to the way contractors and subcontractors are treated in the construction industry, and Labor supports this bill. I want to first make a couple of comments about some of the boasting that we heard from the Minister in his initial contribution. He's very fond of conjuring up vast numbers of buildings that are going to be built in his crystal ball, and he likes to say that we're in the midst of this incredible boom, more building than ever before. But what he omits to say, actually, is that his signal achievement as Minister is that he's increased the build rate in the last few years, what is it, 2, 3, 4 times off what the lowest base in living memory. His benchmark, his comparator for the increase in the build rate is the depths of the global financial crisis. And that is his great achievement. And when he loves to talk about this huge building boom that he's claiming credit for, what he omits to say, what the Minister omits to say, is that under his watch, Auckland, we're in the middle of a housing crisis, and the Productivity Commission says that we currently have a shortfall of some 32,000 homes built up since National's been in government. When the Minister talks about the great building boom, as he did in his remarks, he fails to point out that actually we're still building 2,500 fewer dwellings than we need just to keep up with population growth. That is absolutely the truth. The Minister says it's not the truth, but it is absolutely the truth. And when you look at the statistics, when you look at the work of the Productivity Commission, of Auckland Council, and anybody else who cares to look at this, it's clear, it's very clear, that the shortage of houses in Auckland is getting worse every week, and it has been getting worse every week since Nick Smith became the Minister.
Move on to the bill, please.
Mr Speaker, the construction industry is very important, and the Minister himself pointed out it has something like 200,000 employees. It's responsible for something like 6 to 7% of the country's GDP. But the problem with the construction industry is that it is plagued by a boom and bust cycle that guts it regularly of its skilled workers. When the industry takes a hit, as it does from time to time, firms like Mainzeal go under, taking with them hundreds and hundreds of contractors. So this bill fixes part of the problem, which is the law that puts subcontractors at risk. And the bill fixes that, and that's great. And I'm going to talk some more about how Clayton Cosgrove basically cut the lunch of the Minister in actually providing the most important feature of this bill. It came out of Clayton Cosgrove's issues paper after the collapse of Mainzeal, and it came out of his SOP. And Nick Smith salvaged some integrity and credibility for this bill by basically picking up Clayton Cosgrove's good work. The issue of retentions was, I think, really well illustrated by the Mainzeal collapse. Mainzeal went into receivership owing nearly $100 million, having $95 million in assets and owing $100 million. And I want to quote one small business owner who was badly affected, who is typical of hundreds of others. Electrical contractor, small business owner Dave Burt, was out of pocket to the tune of $25,000 because the retentions that Mainzeal held for that subcontractor were not protected. They had no legal protection. And Dave Burt was left with $25,000 out of pocket, not to mention hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other contractors who lost their tools. Their tools of trade were locked behind security guards and locked gates, and they couldn't get them in the Mainzeal collapse. And I want to pay credit to the work that Clayton Cosgrove did in addressing that. It is ironic, as Clayton Cosgrove said, that at the very time that Nick Smith brings a construction contracts bill to this House that sets out to reduce the vulnerability of subcontractors in the industry to losing those retentions, that the National Party is displaying once again this schizophrenic view that it has about deregulation in the building industry. Having been responsible for this ideological burp to deregulate the building industry in the early 90s, having put the country through a $22 billion disaster that Paula Bennett now thinks we've all moved on from. $22 billion is the dollar value of the losses faced by tens of thousands of New Zealand homeowners because of the national government's leaky homes disaster. And now Paula Bennett thinks we've all moved on. Well, we haven't. And as Clayton Cosgrove pointed out, the government has come a cropper in Christchurch with appalling quality of the EQC repairs. And what we see in Auckland now, according to Auckland Council's most senior building inspector, an epidemic of shoddy work. Now, the Auckland Council just revealed the other day that it has set up a special investigations unit to crack down on cowboy builders because there are so many of them. They've set up a special complaints and investigations unit. And what people in the construction industry are saying, Mr. Speaker, is that there are two people who are responsible for this at the moment. Now, one of them is Maurice Williamson, who watered down the requirements of the licensed building practitioner scheme. He was so desperate to get builders in registered with the licensed builder practitioner scheme that the standards, the quality standards for training and certification have been made so low that the LBP scheme is almost meaningless. So a giant missed opportunity to actually raise the standards of quality and of training. The other minister who's responsible for this is the minister who has spoken in this debate, the Honourable Nick Smith. And people, the most senior people in the construction industry have pointed out to me that they, in their official task force on this, recommended to the government that the government make a top priority of investing in quality and training in the construction industry. And that minister has basically parked it. He's told the construction industry that that's not a priority for him. He's put it to one side. He doesn't care about it. And the most senior and influential people in the construction industry are appalled by Nick Smith's attitude. So he comes to this House with what is, which is in itself a very good bill. It fixes a long-standing injustice, and that is the failure to protect retentions for subcontractors in the construction industry. But at the same time, this minister does nothing to protect the quality of work in the construction industry, which alongside the boom and bust cycle is what puts the very same subcontractors at risk. And there will be, believe me, in Christchurch with the EQC repairs, in Auckland with this epidemic of shoddy cowboy building material, we are going to see more and more firms at risk of going under because of the instability caused by this government's failure to actually address the underlying structural causes of the boom and bust cycle. That's at the heart of this issue. This government has done nothing to address it. Retentions are incredibly important, Mr. Speaker, and there are thousands and thousands of subcontractors at work in this industry who are reliant on having guaranteed access to those retentions. The fact that this bill, Mr. Speaker, basically requires them to be held in trust or on trust, not in a trust account, and that was Clayton Cosgrove's original proposal, that the retentions be held in a trust account. And as we've heard, the Minister felt that this would create too much in the way of compliance costs. Well, we will see. We will see whether or not a statutory obligation to hold these funds in trust provides sufficient protection. Maybe the government's right, maybe they're not. But the important principle is that those retentions will be held, they will be legally protected, the companies will not be able to use them for cash flow, And it's our sincere wish on this side of the House that that is going to provide a lot more financial security for subcontractors.